Do you remember the last time you truly felt at peace? Not just fine, not just surviving, but genuinely at peace, like the cool breeze after a scorching summer day, or the steady rhythm of your heartbeat as you lie quietly listening to the rain tapping on a tin roof. Now, what if I told you there is a way to bring your body back to that peaceful state, and it only requires one thing: breathing. No medication, no machines, no clinic visits, just one mindful breath. We've been conditioned to believe that lowering blood pressure requires a complete lifestyle overhaul. Change your diet, exercise, cut salt, take pills. But there's a hidden reset button inside you, one that can tell your heart to slow down, your blood vessels to relax, and your pressure to ease down like a gentle stream flowing through a rocky bed. That button is your breath. But not the shallow, unconscious breathing we do every day. We're talking about scientifically backed breathing techniques, validated by dozens of clinical studies, that can lower your blood pressure in as little as 30 seconds to a few minutes. In this video, you'll discover why most of us are breathing the wrong way without even realizing it, and how it silently raises our blood pressure. 3 incredibly simple breathing techniques that work like a natural tranquilizer. How to practice these at home every day. No devices, no pressure, just a quiet space and your presence. Your breath, something you do 20,000 times a day, could be the key to unlocking the health you thought you lost. Let's begin that journey with one deep breath right now.
Millions of people race against pressure every day, but few realize this: the first thing that reacts to stress isn't your mind, it's your breath. Think back to the last time you were stressed, angry, or anxious. How did you breathe? Shallow, short, rapid, like a bellows puffing erratically in a gusty wind. Air barely made it to your chest, never reaching the bottom of your lungs. And that's when the storm began to rise from within. Science has proven when you breathe rapidly, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. It thinks you're in a state of fight or flight. Your heart races, your blood vessels constrict, and your blood pressure spikes, even though you haven't moved from your chair. Worst of all, you have no idea it's happening. Breathing, which should be your inner healer, silently turns into an accomplice to disease, simply because you haven't learned how to use it properly. A study from Harvard Medical School found that just 2 minutes of continuous, shallow breathing can raise systolic blood pressure by 10 to 15 millimeters of mercury. That means if you're hovering around 135, you could easily shoot up to 150 simply because of poor breathing habits. The danger is this: no one teaches us how to breathe correctly. No one warns that silent stress, the kind older adults experience daily, is a stronger blood pressure trigger than salt. And sadly, even the best blood pressure monitor can't measure the level of stress you inhale with each breath. If you've ever asked yourself, "I've cut down salt, I take my meds regularly, so why is my blood pressure still high?" The answer might not be in your medicine cabinet, but in how you breathe every morning. In the next section, we'll explore why proper breathing doesn't just lower blood pressure, it activates your body's natural recovery system, helping you feel healthier, lighter, and safer every single day. People fear high blood pressure like they fear a thunderstorm. Sudden, violent, capable of striking you down in an instant. But few realize that storm doesn't come out of nowhere.
It begins with a gentle breeze called stress. With shallow breaths each morning, when you jump out of bed without greeting your body. With fragmented breathing as you scroll through unsettling news. With unconscious sighs every time your heart tightens over something left unsaid. Let science speak. A 2020 study, published in the Journal of Hypertension, followed over 400 older adults. The group practicing breathing therapy lowered their systolic blood pressure by an average of 11 millimeters of mercury in just 8 weeks, the equivalent of taking a low-dose blood pressure medication. Researchers at Yale University discovered just 5 minutes of deep breathing per day activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural brake. The result? A slower heart rate, dilated blood vessels, and a release of endorphins, the calming, feel-good hormones. The Cleveland Heart Center went even further. They call proper breathing pill-free medicine. No prescriptions, no swallowing, no side effects. And in real life, what's actually happening? Elaine, 67, told her doctor her heart would race every night, even when doing nothing. After learning box breathing, not only did she sleep better, but she also cut out 2 medications within a month. George, 72, used to believe only drugs could control his blood pressure, until he started practicing diaphragmatic breathing during his morning walks. After just 3 weeks, his BP dropped from 148/92 to 130/85, without changing his diet or adding heavy workouts. The problem isn't that there's no solution. It's that no one ever showed you the way. And the bitter truth? We go through life breathing 20,000 times a day, yet never learn how to breathe in a way that helps us live longer and healthier. Now is the time to change that. In the next section, you'll get hands-on experience with 3 science-backed breathing techniques, specifically designed for older adults, to help stabilize blood pressure, calm your nervous system, and restore a deep sense of safety inside your own body.
You can't control your heartbeat. You can't command your blood vessels to relax every time you're stressed. But you can control your breath. And that breath, when guided with the right rhythm and direction, becomes the conductor of the internal symphony within your body, orchestrating your heart, blood vessels, nervous system, and emotions. Now is the moment to begin that journey. In the next few minutes, I'll guide you through 3 simple breathing techniques, all scientifically proven to lower blood pressure within 30 seconds to a few minutes, calm your sympathetic nervous system, the one that corners you in stress, slow your heart rate, relax your blood vessels, and restore inner peace. No equipment, no prior experience, no supervision needed. All it takes is a few minutes a day to breathe, not just to survive, but to truly live well. Here are the 3 techniques you're about to learn. 4-7-8 breathing, a natural sedative in the center of your chest. Box breathing, the square formula to master anxiety and stabilize blood pressure. Diaphragmatic breathing, the art of belly breathing for deep physical recovery. Imagine this. Your body is like a car sliding downhill with no brakes. Blood pressure rising, heart racing, mind panicking. At that moment, 4-7-8 breathing is your emergency handbrake. Gentle, unhurried, yet strong enough to pull you back from the cliff of anxiety and high blood pressure. How to do it? Follow along with me now. Exhale completely through your mouth, softly, as if blowing out a candle. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Imagine you're slowly pouring water into a glass, smooth and steady. Hold your breath for 7 seconds, as if you're cradling a quiet treasure in your chest. Exhale gently through your mouth for 8 seconds, like releasing a leaf to float across a calm lake. Repeat this cycle 4 times. It only takes around 2 minutes, but the calming effect can last for hours. Why is this technique so effective? The 7-second hold activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and restore mode. Exhaling longer than inhaling, 8-4, slows your heart rate, relaxes blood vessels, and lowers blood pressure. A study in the Journal of Clinical Hypertension found practicing the 4-7-8 method regularly for 2 weeks reduced systolic blood pressure by 10 to 12 millimeters of mercury. What's happening inside your body during this? CO2 levels are balanced to keep blood vessels open and relaxed. The brain releases GABA, a neurotransmitter that calms the nervous system. Your heartbeat begins to resemble a soothing jazz rhythm instead of the pounding drums of anxiety. Best times to use the 4-7-8 technique. Before measuring your blood pressure, to avoid inaccurate readings due to nervousness. Before bedtime, to ease into deep, restorative sleep and prevent nighttime spikes. After a stressful phone call, watching the news, or reliving a difficult memory. Anytime your nerves need calming. Important notes. If you're new to this, you may feel a bit lightheaded. That's normal. Just reduce to 2 to 3 cycles at first and increase gradually. Avoid practicing right after a heavy meal or while driving. Sit upright, relaxed, and in a distraction-free environment. Think of this technique as a door and your breath as the key. With every inhale, you open space for peace. With every exhale, you let go of anxiety, tension, and high blood pressure. Ready for the next technique? Let's explore box breathing, the square-shaped method that steadies your blood pressure and anchors your mind, even on the stormiest days. In a world full of chaos, everyone needs a safe square. A space where you can sit down, breathe steadily, and feel in control again. Box breathing, also known as square breathing, is that invisible box. A technique trusted by Navy SEALs, fighter pilots, and psychologists to calm the mind. And now it's being used to calm blood pressure, too. How to do it? Follow along with me. Imagine you're tracing the outline of a square with your breath, each side equal in length. Inhale for 4 seconds, like climbing up the left side of the square. Hold your breath for 4 seconds, pausing at the top, surveying the view. Exhale for 4 seconds, sliding down the right side. Hold again for 4 seconds, pausing at the bottom, preparing for the next round. 1 full cycle is 1 breathing box. Repeat 4 to 5 times. Why is box breathing effective for blood pressure? Its rhythmic pattern soothes the nervous system, like resetting your internal clock. It creates a sense of internal control, reducing cortisol, the stress hormone that elevates blood pressure. According to a study by the National Institutes of Health, older adults who practice box breathing regularly reduced their blood pressure by 8 to 10 millimeters of mercury after just 4 weeks. Real-life applications. Blood pressure fluctuating? Do box breathing every morning before you measure. Facing a stressful situation, bad news, family tension? Use box breathing to stay calm. Struggling with insomnia? Do 4 rounds before bed to settle your mind and body. Tips to boost effectiveness. Visualize a glowing square in front of you, each side marking a count. Draw a square on paper and trace each side with your finger as you breathe. If you feel lightheaded, reduce each side to 3 seconds instead of 4. Box breathing isn't just a technique, it's a sturdy frame you build for yourself whenever blood pressure feels unstable. A mental anchor that keeps you steady through emotional waves. And now, we arrive at the third technique. Simple, yet powerful enough to transform how you breathe for the rest of your life.
diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing using your diaphragm. If the first two techniques are emergency tools when your blood pressure spikes, then diaphragmatic breathing is the foundation for long-term heart health. This isn't a new technique. In fact, you used to breathe this way as a newborn. Watch a sleeping baby. Their belly rises and falls with each breath. That's diaphragmatic breathing, deep, full, and completely natural. It's only as we grow older, rush through life, and face chronic stress that we learn to breathe shallowly from the chest and lose the healing power of our breath. How to practice diaphragmatic breathing. Let's do it together now. Sit upright or lie down comfortably on your back. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds. Your belly hand should rise while your chest hand stays still. Hold your breath for 2 to 3 seconds. Exhale gently through your mouth for 6 seconds. Your belly should fall softly. Repeat for 6 to 8 cycles. What does science say? According to Harvard Health Publishing, diaphragmatic breathing reduces pressure on the heart, improves blood circulation, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps lower blood pressure and relieve stress. A study published in the Journal of Human Hypertension on older adults found, after 6 weeks of diaphragmatic breathing for 10 minutes a day, participants had an average systolic BP reduction of 12 millimeters of mercury, lower heart rates, and improved sleep quality. Why is this method ideal for older adults? It's gentle and non-fatiguing, yet boosts circulation effectively, supports better sleep, digestion, and reduces nighttime heart palpitations. Can be practiced while listening to soft music, sitting on the porch, or right before bed. No special setup needed. Tips to enhance effectiveness. When starting out, place a light book on your belly to feel the rise and fall more clearly. Pair belly breathing with soothing sounds like water, wind, or meditative music to help the brain associate the practice with a sense of peace. Evening sessions before sleep are ideal to lower nighttime blood pressure, a key risk factor for stroke in older adults. This isn't just an exercise. It's a way to retrain your body to breathe as it once did. Gentle, deep, yet profoundly powerful. Now you know all 3 techniques. But the next question is, which one should you choose? How should you practice them throughout the day? Can they be combined?
Just like different types of music suit different moods. A gentle tune for the morning, a calming meditation track for the night, a steady marching beat for when you need inner strength. Each breathing technique you've learned works the same way. Each method fits a specific goal, moment, or emotion, and when combined thoughtfully, they can create a daily symphony of health for your blood pressure and nervous system. Tips to help make it a habit. Set a soft reminder on your phone like, "Time to breathe" for your heart. Print out a daily breathing chart and stick it next to your blood pressure monitor. Practice with a loved one. Turn breathing into a relaxing evening family ritual. You don't have to do all 3 techniques every day. Just choose 1 to 2 techniques that match your lifestyle and emotional needs and stick with them for 2 weeks. You'll start to feel your heart growing calmer, your blood pressure stabilizing, and your mind feeling lighter. Breathing is something we do every day, but when we practice breathing with the intention to heal, there's one more thing we need: awareness and preparation. Without it, instead of feeling relaxed, you might feel dizzy or tired and mistakenly think, "This isn't right for me."
Here are some important tips to help you practice safely, effectively, and consistently. 1. When is the best time to practice? Don't practice right after a full meal. Wait at least 30 minutes. Avoid practicing while driving, bathing, or during intense physical activity. Golden moments to practice. After waking up, before measuring your blood pressure, right before bedtime. 2. Posture matters more than you think. Sit upright or lie flat on your back without tensing your shoulders. Keep your feet flat on the floor if sitting, and rest your hands gently on your belly or thighs. Avoid lying on your side or slouching. It can block your ability to breathe deeply. 3. Feeling dizzy, sleepy, or tight in the chest? Reduce the number of breath cycles. Start with just 2 to 3 rounds, then gradually increase. Shorten each phase, for example, 3, 5, 6 instead of 4, 7, 8. Pause, return to normal breathing for a few minutes, and try again later. 4. Don't pressure yourself to feel something right away. For many people, the relaxation effect only shows up after 3 to 5 days. Like growing a tree, you can't force it to bloom overnight. Your breath is a long-time companion. The more patient you are, the more gently it will respond. 5. Track your progress. Record your blood pressure before and after each session, especially during the first week. You'll likely notice some.
And the 5. Track your progress. Record your blood pressure before and after each session, especially during the first week. You'll likely notice something remarkable. Within just a few sessions, your numbers start improving. Breathing, when done right, is like medicine, but it only works when taken at the right dose, the right way, and consistently. You've probably heard hundreds of tips about managing blood pressure. Eat less salt. Exercise regularly. Take your meds on time. They're all true, but they all focus on the outside. Today you've learned something even more powerful. The way you inhale and exhale, something you do over 20,000 times a day, might be the quiet key that keeps your heart at peace. What have you learned in this video? 3 simple yet powerful breathing techniques. 4-7-8 breathing to ease anxiety and improve sleep. Box breathing to regulate emotions and stabilize fluctuating blood pressure. Diaphragmatic breathing to boost oxygen flow and full body recovery. How to practice throughout the day in just 2 to 10 minutes per session. Small but crucial reminders for safe, consistent, and sustainable practice. Now it's your choice. You can click away from this video and continue breathing unconsciously, as always. Or you can pause for just 2 minutes, take one deep, mindful breath, and give your heart a chance to heal. Start today. Choose the one technique that feels easiest to begin with. Practice it daily at a fixed time. Record your blood pressure for 7 days and watch what happens. If this video helped you, subscribe to Senior Health Guide, where I'll continue sharing simple, natural, and effective health tips for people over 55. Share this video with a loved one, because one correct breath might save a tired heart. And leave a comment, "I've started breathing," so we can start this journey together and lift each other up. You can't stop the storm outside, but you can learn to breathe and stand tall like a mountain in the midst of it. Start today. Start with one breath.